While you're doing that, we'll welcome in our first guest on the program. He was a star talk show host here in Portland, and now he's taken his act to even greater heights in Seattle. Member of the great crew at Sports Radio 950 KJR in the Emerald City. Speaking, of course, of Ian Furness. Ian, how are you, sir?
I'm good. You know what? Ruben Boomshay is awful happy because he doesn't have Rasheed Wallace throwing a basketball at his head right now. So
This is true. That's probably what he's best known for. But we have a Blazer buddy doll of his, and so every week on this program we have an obligatory shot of him, just to keep his name alive for whatever the purpose. I don't know when it started, but it's been a tradition that's lasted about the 50 years or so we've carried the program. So
50 years. Congratulations on that.
which is quite amazing since the team's only been around for 44.
Well, to his credit, he was named Big East Scholar Athlete of the Year in 2001.
I told you he was a smart guy.
He was very smart, not very good.
Well, he just didn't have a lot of agility to get out of the way of balls being.
He could tell you every single play that needed to be ran, but don't ask him to run any of them.
Couldn't run them himself. Yes.
No.
And apparently, the folks in Europe have discovered that too, I guess. But so, Ian, we were hopeful. We've always been hopeful that the NBA would make its return to Seattle. Thought it might happen with the efforts to get the Kings from Sacramento. That didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, the whole Donald Sterling thing sprouts up, and trouble ensues with the ownership situation there. And then out of the blue, Steve Ballmer comes in, and it appears is going to purchase the Clippers for a huge price, but that, I guess, takes him out of the mix for ownership in Seattle. So what happens now? How disappointing was that for the folks of Seattle to hear a guy they were kind of counting on to be part of an ownership group if the NBA was going to make its return? Do we have any idea of why he decided that this was the opportunity he wanted to seize instead of maybe continuing to wait for an opportunity in Seattle?
Well, I mean, I think the big thing is he just wanted to be an NBA owner, guys. He wanted to own an NBA team, and it didn't matter if that team was in Seattle, if it was in Los Angeles, if it was in Iceland. I don't think it mattered. He just wanted to be an NBA owner. He's a big basketball fan. He's a basketball junkie, and he wanted to be an NBA owner, and he had the financial wherewithal to do it at some point. It's just a matter of finding a team to come up. And I think, with the Seattle situation, which I know we'll get deeper into, he didn't see anything on the horizon, I would assume. I mean, from all indications, he just saw an opportunity to buy the Clippers. And I think the NBA, I think they urged him to buy it. It's a guy I think they've wanted in the club for a while. It's kind of, I think it's a more exclusive country club than Augusta National in a lot of ways. It's just they pick and choose who they want to be hanging around with, and they wanted Steve Ballmer, and they got Steve Ballmer for an inflated price of $2 billion.
You know what? I agree with you, first of all. It is more exclusive than Augusta National, but I don't know that the price was inflated. A lot of people are looking at it and saying he paid too much for the team, but first of all, in my eyes, it's worth what you're willing to pay. But second of all, the Lakers signed, $3 billion contract for TV rights?
TV deal, yeah.
So when you look at it from that standpoint, they're the up-and-coming team. The Lakers are almost passé now. So he has a chance to take this team to that next level and get that kind of revenue coming into that team.
Well, yeah, and Tone, I would agree with that to a point. I think, he everything's worth what you pay for it and whatever the check gets written for. By all indications, he paid at least $200 to $400 million more than the other offers were, and it never really. I don't think it ever got to be a bidding war. And the weird thing with the NBA is with the sale of teams, they've never made it a bidding war. I mean, if it would have been a true bidding war with Sacramento, then Seattle would have won, and they would have won going away with Steve Ballmer's financial wherewithal. Same thing with Milwaukee. I mean, he could have gone in there. In fact, if you remember back to the Sacramento situation, they said, hey, this isn't a bidding war. That was actually stated by, I believe it was either Adam Silver or David Stern. It's not a bidding war. It's not what it's about. It's about, finding a good ownership group. And in this case, it just feels like they said, hey, come in. It's almost, I kind of got a feeling it's like the silent auction. We just did the Caddies for Cure thing a couple of weeks ago. It's like you go up, I see that thing. Okay, I like it. I'm at the guaranteed bid. Okay, boom, it's over. And it kind of felt like that in a sense. As far as the inflated price, look, you're talking about still, I would think, you guys go down there for every game. They're still the Clippers at the end of the day. They're not the Lakers. They don't have the history. It's the Mets to the Yankees. It's just, it's the White Sox to the Cubs. They can win championships. They can do things. They're still not the Lakers. They don't have the same revenue streams, is my understanding, right? They don't have luxury suite sales, concessions. They don't get a huge part of, if any at all. it's not as a lucrative a lease as it is for the Lakers or even the LA Kings for that matter. So from that standpoint, he paid $2 billion. He better hope he didn't pay $2 billion for an NBA team like we all paid for houses back in 07 and 08, because that bubble might burst.
Well, I agree, but I just don't know how it can. There's still only 30 of them, and there's a lot of people that want to get involved.
No, you're right. You're very much right in that regard.
Well, and the other thing that a lot of people seem to be talking about, the fact that the NBA as a whole is getting ready for a new national television deal, and everybody seems to think that this is going to be a big boost for income for all the NBA teams. So, I'm sure that factors into it as well as in addition to whatever he can do locally with a new TV deal in Los Angeles with the Clippers. But let's get to the important fact, which is where does this leave Seattle? Where does this leave them in terms of having an ownership group? And we know it doesn't necessarily do anything to change. It wasn't as if a new NBA team came on board and Seattle wasn't it. It's basically just changing ownership of an existing team. So that part hasn't changed. But what's the feeling now about having to maybe start over again with trying to get some more big time money people to get together? Obviously, losing a Bomber is a pretty big hit in that respect. But it isn't as if there aren't some other people that hopefully are ready to step up and take his spot.
Well, it's tough because, there's a number of different ways to look at it. And one of them, Wheels, I think, is this. If Steve Ballmer, who's based here in Seattle, now look, he's got the financial wherewithal to live wherever he wants and do what he wants to do. But if Steve Ballmer, who was involved from almost the start with Chris Hansen, with the guy that bought the property to build the arena and really kind of spearheaded the effort, or is spearheading the effort to bring the NBA back to Seattle, when Steve Ballmer effectively bails out on that ownership group in which he was the biggest part of it, you have to wonder if, just using a little bit of common sense here, that, Steve Ballmer has probably a direct line to Adam Silver and others, and were they telling him, hey, look, don't hold your breath on Seattle or expansion or anything like that anytime soon. So he made the move. They can find more money. The problem is what Steve Ballmer did to Seattle, and I'm going to state it in that way. What Steve Ballmer did to Seattle by paying $2 billion for the Los Angeles Clippers is he put the city council and the county council in Seattle, which had approved a basic agreement to have a private-public partnership to build a new arena here. He put those councils in a really precarious situation with public funds and public financing because, as you guys well know, there's nothing the NBA loves more than public-private partnership with a new building. That's what they want. They don't want somebody to write a check for a new building. They want you to write a $2 billion check for a franchise, but not for a whole building. They don't want to set that precedent. They never have. That's been stated over and over again, at least by the past commissioner. I think the new one would have those same thoughts. So now all of a sudden here in Seattle, Steve Ballmer spends $2 billion after asking this city and this county for money to build a new arena, to help them partner and build that new arena. And even though you and I and everybody listening is a Blazer fan and a basketball fan knows about private-public partnerships and why that should work, everyone has skin in the game. In today's world we live in, it's pretty difficult for those councils to go to their constituents and say, yeah, we still need to help write a check for these guys that can pay $2 billion for a franchise. It just didn't help the situation at all in any way, shape, or form. Plus, the other thing that hurt Seattle is, we were thinking expansion franchise is probably being around the $550 to $600 million range. Well, I think that changed. If I go back to what you said, Tone, there's 30 teams. There's 30. And if you want to have 32 to get in that club, it may cost you $1 billion now. And that puts you in a situation where I'm not sure if it pencils out to even come close to breaking even. And as we well know, owners, they may not make money on the front end, but they don't want to lose too much money every year. So it was a very difficult thing for Seattle.
Well, I will say this, though, Ian. I was reading a recent Forbes magazine, and it was talking about the newest rich people in the world. There were 26 new billionaires created in 2012. They're coming. There's people out there. There are more of them every day. So, there will be people.
Anybody we know?
No, unfortunately not. In fact, I'm waiting to see my name on the list. But right now,
Mike Barrett's name's on that list. I think
he's got to be close.
It said I was
close on the cusp.
When I did the celebrity net worth, it said, first of all, you're not a celebrity. Secondly, you are $999,999,999 away from being a billionaire.
Well, and you're right. There's money out there. I don't think that'll be the issue. Chris Hansen said on our station up on KJR today. He said he came on and did something with our afternoon guy with Softy, and he said, hey, there were people always wanting to get in the group before with Palmer, but with Palmer there, they were kind of shy about doing that. There's egos and everything else involved. The money, in terms of finding some money, shouldn't be a huge issue. The question is, what's a franchise going to cost now? Obviously it's L.A., second biggest market, maybe not the great revenue streams that you would have with a Laker franchise, but it's still L.A., corporate sponsorship's huge, et cetera, et cetera. But by the same token, that if that means you're going to be spending, close to $1 billion for an expansion franchise, it's going to take you 5-6 years to be competitive. And then at that point, are you so far well down in debt with that franchise you don't want to spend money on the franchise, et cetera, et cetera? There's a lot of big picture stuff to look at here. As far as finding money, guys, and the billionaires, sure they exist. I think what we've seen now is you need to be a billionaire times 10 at least to get in the game and to play the game. And then you have to be a basketball guy and a sports guy. And, that's the one thing that hurts with Ballmer. He is a basketball guy, and he's a Seattle guy. He's a Microsoft guy. We thought he was the white knight, and that didn't happen.
The question is, Chris Hansen obviously disappointed in this development, but is he any less enthusiastic about still staying in the fight and still doing what's necessary? Because obviously you wouldn't want to lose him as kind of the guy that's been spearheading this effort all along.
When I listened to him today, I kind of got the impression, yes. He talked to the AP guy, Tim Booth, up here and did a TV interview as well. Chris Hansen's always been a picture of positive, He's always been a positive guy. But, look, he would be lying to himself and to us and everybody else if we didn't think this was a hit. It was a hit for all the reasons we talked about. Not just losing his whale, but also it was a hit because of what Ballmer's price tag did to inflating the price for either another franchise or an expansion franchise, and also what it did politically here in Seattle. It was a huge hit.
Ian, thanks so much for the visit. I wish we were talking about the good news of the NBA coming to Seattle, but still
they're going to go preseason games.
No, that won't go over very well, I think. But listen to the growling.
I think Oklahoma City should face the Clippers in Seattle in the preseason next year.
Oh, not if they don't want to play in front of crickets.
Yeah, there'll be five people there. You know what? It'll look like a Charlotte game's going to break out at any time. So.
Speaking of teams that maybe should be elsewhere, but one of these days, I know we're going to have that conversation about the NBA coming back to Seattle, and days like this will hopefully be a distant memory. But thanks for the update on everything. We hope you're well, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Great talking to you two guys. You too, Captain. Take care.
Ian Furness from Sports Radio KJR in Seattle. You got a feel for those folks.
Not me. They let the team go.
Well, I don't know.
They could have saved that franchise, Wheels. They didn't do it.
A few folks maybe could have. But every time I saw Clay Bennett sitting courtside when the Thunder were losing, I said, that's what you get. That's what you get. And remember, I said that to him when he walked past us one time.
You said it very loudly for me to hear.
I said, you're a bum. Why'd you let this team leave Seattle? And I said, see, Tony, I told him. The
problem
he was going about 20
feet. He was all the way out of the building.
But I said it. Whether he heard it or not is another question. But I'd say it to him right now if he was right here. Or maybe not.